So on Sunday when I went to church, the topic of the sermon was not placing confidence in the flesh. And it should be understood that the context of the passage we were reading was actually about circumcision and whether or not people should count on that for their vindication and salvation in life. But as I was reading it, it made me think about the events of the previous week and the week before that, where I had been romantically involved with this man who, being honest, had a lot of traits I would consider to be not right for me, and yet I was just completely unable to say no to him because he was just so gosh darn attractive. I couldn't, you know, I couldn't resist him really. And, you know, it made me think about the way throughout life, and I verbalized this to the guy himself. I'd lived with this impression that being good looking would somehow make a person's life perfect. That somehow, if I had been born, beautiful enough, my life would have been so much easier. I would have been endlessly popular. People would have been much more patient and tolerant with me, and just, But thinking back over everything I've seen and everything I know, actually life doesn't work that way. In reality, people who are very good looking sometimes face greater discrimination because people not only assume that they must have life so easy and therefore treat them, sometimes more severely, but also because being better looking doesn't really it doesn't make you any smarter. It doesn't, inherently give you better skills. It doesn't really do anything practical for you. And so it isn't really a guarantee of success in life, and if anything, it can sometimes be a drawback. And, especially if you make people angry and jealous, then they just want to, they just want to kill you. I even used to have a boyfriend who was a model. And, I didn't personally think he was all that good looking. I thought he was handsome enough, but not, gloriously attractive. And, yet when we'd go around, there'd be all these girls wanting to talk to him, sometimes right in front of me. They would try to steal him away from me. And, yeah, it was pretty annoying, because they'd turn and look at me like they wanted to kill me. People think that they want a model for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but in practice, it's not a great situation. And, but it made me think about, well, to what extent should looks really matter to a person? Because inevitably, in the dating choices that I personally make, I can't help but factor in appearances. And certainly, I don't factor them in to the extent that some people might expect. And the appearances that I like aren't necessarily what people would expect of me either, but I think the fact that someone was able to have that much power over my thoughts and feelings for any length of time, purely just on the way that they looked and maybe a few other superficial traits like accomplishments and certain skills, that they were able to buffalo me like that. And, I not only that, but there was a way that I have, there is still a way I tend to treat him purely because of the way he looks, that I wouldn't treat him if he were a normal person. If he were a normal person, I would be able to treat him like a normal person. And yet, because he's so good looking, I tend to treat him more like a weird mix of a sort of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. I tend to treat him like I'm talking to a computer a lot of the time. And yeah, um the thing, initially when I met him, I thought he was really nice, and as well though. To me it seemed like he was a nice person. But as I've gone on talking to him, he just seems increasingly rude and callous and even a bit heartless, and Yeah, I mean, I could obviously be misinterpreting the things he's saying because I am aware that he and I come from different cultures as far as communication is concerned, and his culture tends to be very abrupt in ways that can come across as callous and rude. But, the fact is that this is somebody who spent a very long period of time making me deeply uncomfortable, and were he a less attractive person, I'm not sure I would have tolerated it for as long as I did, nor would I necessarily be tolerating it so well now, but, you know, and in fact, I think I have been known to block people for less. Um, not that I recommend that or think that I was doing the right thing at those times, but I guess I mean, yeah, there is an extent to which I'm noticing. Like, I've always known that I took looks a bit too seriously, perhaps. Actually, no, I didn't know that. I was under the impression that society more broadly was obsessed with appearances, and I was just trapped within society having to comply with those standards. When in truth, no, a lot of people I've met, in fact, Sunday night, I was talking to guy number 4 to reject me. I talk about that in another video. And, he was, having this really great chat with me, and we were talking about, dating prospects and what we would look for in a partner and whether or not, what our opinions are about appearances. And, you know, um, yeah, we talked about whether, to what extent looks ought to matter. And what he revealed to me is that he was capable of feeling very much attracted to a woman, almost completely absent of, from her appearances, and absolutely based on her instrument playing, which to me was very surprising. I mean, obviously to me it's of little comfort since I'm neither particularly, well, okay, people tell me I'm good looking, but I don't think I'm like, you know, super good looking. And I don't really play an instrument. Yeah, I just don't really play. And if to the extent that I can, it's not impressive. It's actually disappointing. So hearing him say that didn't exactly make me go, "Oh, great! I still have hope." It was more a feeling of, "Oh, men aren't quite what I thought they were. Like they're not as narrow, in terms of what they find attractive as I had believed." And I even sat there and I said to him, well, I was raised believing that a woman had to, be blonde with blue eyes and big boobs and not much going on in her head to be attractive to a man. And he was kind of horrified when I said this, much to his credit. He's a very nice young man. Um, and, yeah, he's, he kind of gave me a lot of perspective, I guess. He not only helped me to see that men aren't as superficial as I had assumed, but also that, yeah, there's there's more to men than I would have thought. There's and they think more of women than I would have thought. Like, as in, they don't just see us, I guess, as potential sex objects. They do think other things of us, and well, I mean, I guess I kind of already knew that because talking to this guy, I could tell he wasn't that sort. Like he, you know, didn't really talk to me that much about sexuality, and insofar as he did, he was very academic about it. He wasn't really talking about it, in such a personal sort of way, which I got kind of like I did wonder if he was asexual, but um, there were other things he said that made it sound like, no, that's not what's happening. And, but anyway, yeah. And it makes me think to myself that maybe I make too much of appearances again. Like, not just in terms of taking people far too seriously if they are good looking. Like, because, yeah, in everyday life, if I'm around a very attractive person. Like, even Sunday night at church, a couple of really, attractive looking guys turned up. And I just found I couldn't talk to them. Like, I wanted to be able to be brave and walk up to them and say hi the way I would with any new person at church or any person at church I hadn't seen before. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I found myself completely ignoring them because I just felt like they're too good looking. A dirty little creature like me has no right to speak to these creatures. And yeah, but it occurs to me that if everybody they ever met treated them that way, they'd be friendless except for other extremely attractive people. And yeah, and it'd be this self-perpetuating thing where we look at groups of really good-looking people being friends and think, oh, they're just being exclusive. They just won't be friends with us because we're not as pretty as they are, and they're just too cool for us, and we're not good enough for them. And when in truth, it could be that we're excluding them in the first place, and it's just that they're having, you know what I mean? If we completely exclude them for being good looking, then, they can only be amongst people like themselves in the first place. And, I do, yeah, there's other subjects I want to talk about, and, I mean, the friend I was talking to Sunday night did make this interesting argument about the idea that appearances can be a way, like the reason we have preferences about appearances at all when it comes to sexuality is because, it's a way of keeping the gene pool reasonably clean, which is a little sad, given that not everybody is good looking, and yet I think, everybody should have access to love itself. But yes, ultimately within myself, I don't really know how to stop caring about appearances. Like, I don't know how to stop myself from being quite so frightened of people I consider to be too good looking for me to be allowed to talk to them. Because of course it's a terrifying set of situations, like, yeah, and I suppose I could try doing some visualization exercises where I imagine myself in the situation being okay. But, you know, like, it's still just a scary thing, I guess, to know the extent to which I worry about this stuff, like, to which, because as a Christian, looks shouldn't matter to me. I should be able to care about people regardless of appearances. So this is definitely something about myself that I would like to change, that I would like to improve.